What are the pros and cons of moving to Washington State? Today, we're going over all of that. Hey, welcome back to the Living in Vancouver and Camas, Washington YouTube channel. I'm your host, Hannah Dubyne, and I'm so glad you're here today because we're talking about the pros and cons of moving to Washington State. Most of my videos I make are about where I live, which is Clark County, Washington, but today I'm going a little bit more macro and we're talking about Washington State as a whole. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in Washington State. I grew up a little bit north of Seattle in a little town called Lake Stevens. Then I went to Eastern Washington for school for 3 years, and now I'm down here in Southwest Washington in Clark County. I think it's a great state and I hope to never move out of it. So today I'm sharing the pros and cons with you if you're thinking about moving to the area. The first pro on my list is activities. Activities. We have activities galore here in Washington. I think this is something I took for granted growing up. We've got hikes, we have mountains close by where you can go snowboarding and skiing. We have lots of community things that are happening. We have, Seattle, which is a big city, so there's lots to do there. You can go in the Space Needle, you can go to all the shops downtown. Our weather is nice enough in the summer where you can do summer sports. You can go mountain biking and you can go wakeboarding and water skiing and jet skiing and all of those fun things. Kind of tying into that one, another pro I have on the list is outdoor opportunities. This is one of the biggest reasons I see why people move to Washington is because they're super outdoorsy and they want to go hiking and they want to go mountain biking and they want to go snowboarding and they want to do BMX biking. It's really cool that we have opportunities for all of these things right here in Washington State. I work with a lot of people that come from places like Texas or Arizona or California, and there's no snow over there. A lot of times there's not a lot of bodies of water either that you're able to do water sports on, and here we get just about everything. Another pro of living in Washington State is that we do not have state income tax. I honestly did not realize growing up that there are states that have state income tax because I grew up without it. For example, down here in Clark County, we border Oregon. Oregon has a state income tax. If you're a high earner, you'll probably pay about 10% of your earnings away to the state of Oregon. But here in Washington, you keep it and instead you pay a sales tax. Another huge pro that I think is honestly overlooked is that we have protection from natural disasters. Now, no place is without natural disasters at all. That does not exist. But we do not have tornadoes here. We do not have hurricanes. We do not have monsoons. We do not have extreme heat waves. We also do not have crazy snowstorms. What we do have is the risk of an earthquake or a volcano. Those are, once every decade, 2, 3. I mean, I've never had a volcano blow up while I lived here, and I've never been through a large earthquake. I've been through a couple little tiny ones, which is honestly kind of fun, but I feel blessed that we don't live in a place where a giant storm, like a giant hurricane, can come through and just totally destroy your life. Next pro on my list is wine country. If you are a wine fan, then living in Washington is good for you because you're gonna be close to where wine is grown. There are a lot of wineries out in central Washington area. That's a prime area for grapes to grow. So if you want to take a weekend trip with your friends out there, that is always super fun. And if you live down here where I live in Clark County, Washington, you're gonna be close to Oregon, where there's also tons of additional wineries. Okay, this one might be a little controversial, but I have weather next. Weather you could put in both the pro and the con category. I think it's more subjective. For me, this ends up in the pro category because I love our weather here. And by the way, watch our full video about weather in Clark County, Washington. It's gonna be super helpful. We get all 4 seasons here, which I think is the most amazing thing. It really makes you live more cyclically and you just kind of lean into the traditions of each season. And I don't know, I don't think I would do very well living somewhere where it's hot all the time, or like a lot of people in different parts of the country, it's extremely hot for half the year and it's literally covered in snow for the other half of the year. We don't get snow that sits on the ground here. We get snow once or twice a year and it melts away. Our spring is beautiful. Summer is hot enough to enjoy, but not so hot that you're dying. And fall is also absolutely gorgeous. We have trees with leaves falling everywhere. It's crisp out. It's still a little bit warm in the daytime. I love it. Next pro on my list is good restaurants. If you're a foodie, this is definitely a spot for you to be. If you're looking in all of Washington, then closer to larger cities is gonna have more food opportunities for you. I'm thinking, down here in Clark County, we've got a lot of great local restaurants that make great food. And then if you can't find what you want in Clark County, you can just hop over the river to Portland and go to another great restaurant. All right, maybe this is an important one for some of you guys, but we're pretty much bug-free here in Washington. Now, it doesn't come without a caveat. We do have spiders, like, little medium-sized ones, but we don't have like giant, crazy, scary ones. We don't have tarantulas here. We don't have cockroaches. We do not have termites. I've never seen a cockroach or termite in my life. We don't have scorpions. My friends from Arizona tell me that they've got scorpions that'll come in their house. None of those. Nope, none. We just have little tiny, mostly harmless spiders, which I will take any day over the other options. Another great thing about living in Washington is East Side. Maybe you're not aware, but there's actually a whole nother part of Washington that doesn't look like the Pacific Northwest. It's not full of green trees. It's not full of evergreens. When you cross over the mountain range and you get to Eastern Washington, you're basically in the climate of like Idaho or Montana. And you do have hot summers and snowy winters. That is where I went to school. I went to school at Washington State University in Pullman, and it's really fun over there. It's a great atmosphere. It's a little bit more blue collar. Spokane, Washington is over there. That's one of the top 5 largest cities in Washington. Definitely worth a visit sometime. And in between, we have the Gorge Amphitheater, which is where a lot of big concerts go on. Every summer we have Watershed Music Festival. It's a big country music festival. There are lots of other festivals out there. People go and camp. It's really sick. I love that we have that here in the state. Okay, this is another fun one that I just really thought of while I was making this list, which is that we have Puget Sound islands here. We have a whole bunch of islands up in the corner of Washington, which I don't know any other states that have that, maybe down besides the other complete corner of the United States in Florida area. But the fun things that come along with that are whale watching. I remember doing that a few times as a kid. Boating, you get to go on ferries. Going on a ferry was a fairly regular thing for me as a kid, but I realized that most people have maybe never been on a ferry before. There's also lots of beautiful scenic hikes around the islands, and there's also some military forts. If you've never been to an old abandoned military fort, that's a really cool thing to do. That pretty much sums up my pros part of the list. I love Washington. People ask me that all the time, do you actually like living there? Yes, if I didn't, I would move. But I have to get on to the cons because that's also important if you're gonna consider moving here. So the first con on my list is sales tax. We can't fully escape taxes. If we did, then we wouldn't be able to fund our government. So I think that's a good thing. But because we don't pay state income tax, we instead pay state sales tax. This differs from county to county, and I do have a video up about taxes in Clark County, so go ahead and watch that if you want more information. But sales tax right now runs around 8 to 10% depending on where you are in the state. Another con of Washington State, specifically the Pacific Northwest, is gonna be the rain, the gloomy winters. People talk about this, the sadness that potentially comes along with it if you live somewhere like California or Arizona where the sun was out all the time. I personally do not have a problem with this, but I know other people do, and you can't really always tell until you move here. So that's unfortunate, but it is the truth. I don't see this one as a huge con, but it is a bigger state compared to like my friends on the East Coast where the states are all tiny, little bitty, itty bitty. So it takes a while to drive across. I would say it takes about 6 hours to drive all the way north to south. And then if you wanted to drive all the way from the coast to the other side of Washington State, it will probably take you 8 or 9. So it's a big state. Another con of living in the Pacific Northwest on the west side is gonna be traffic. That's gonna depend a lot on where you live, but especially if you live around King County, Snohomish County, Olympia area, you're gonna get in quite a bit of traffic on the I-5. There's a lot of commuters there for work. If you live in Clark County, down where I live, honestly, I think we have some of the best traffic for what we've got here. The traffic that we have in comparison is really not that bad. unless you commute over the bridge every day to go to work in Portland, you're gonna be pretty clear from traffic. So I think that's great. And then the last con I have on my list is homelessness and just community issues. I think we all know that this type of problem has been on the rise across the country, not just our state. It is unfortunate because we want those people to get help, but it's a complicated problem. So nonetheless, we can acknowledge that it's a problem. I think this one, you have to have some perspective as well. My friends and clients coming from California, they come here and they say, looks great, super clean, I love it. There's really not a big deal with the homelessness. But if I had people move here from somewhere more rural, maybe they moved from Iowa or let's say Kansas City, Missouri, they come here and they say, wow, yeah, you have a lot more homelessness issues in this area than we do, because they lived in a climate and in an area where the people weren't able to survive if they lived on the streets. Here, we don't get bitter cold winters where you're gonna freeze to death outside. So we have more homeless issues, and we hope that our local government is empowered to make some changes soon and make the issue better for us. Well, those are my pros and cons of living in Washington State. I hope the video was helpful to you. If you're interested in moving to Washington, honestly anywhere in Washington, reach out to us, myself and my team at Dubyne Realty Group. We have connections all over the state. We would love to pair you with a detail-oriented realtor who's gonna represent you well, be ethical. That's what we do every day, all day. And if you're interested in moving to Clark County, Washington, send us a DM, send us a text, send us an email. We would love to be of service to you. And don't forget to sign up for our weekend email, Weekend Happenings with Hannah. We handwrite it every week. We put out the best 3 to 5 events happening in the area. If you want to see what life is like here, that's going to be a great tool for you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.